about bad Cowboys or good Browns?
Well, it's about the bad Cowboys because their defense is horrific. It's pretty bad. And the fact that Mike McCarthy brought on Mike Nolan as your defensive coordinator off the scrap heap. Hadn't been a defensive coordinator since 2014 because at the time that he departed from the Atlanta Falcons, they were the 31st ranked defense in the National Football League. And somehow, some way, 6 years later, you're Mike McCarthy. You feel the need to let this guy be your coordinator. Clearly, that's about personal relationships over competence. We all know this. And that's going to be their Achilles heel. I mean, you got DeMarcus Lawrence. They're keying on him. He's your highest paid dude. He doesn't even get a sack. He doesn't have a sack yet. You got Leighton Vander Esch, who's been out. You got Jalen Smith, who's being exposed in terms of, just being in coverage. He just doesn't have it right now. It does not look good. Maybe it's schematically or something. I don't know. Ryan Clark will be more equipped to answer that than me, but he doesn't have it right now. But then on top of it all, we all know that your secondary is suspect, but to top that off with yielding 307 yards rushing, what do you say? I think the only thing that can be said is that the Dallas Cowboys offense is obviously prolific with those three wideouts and Ezekiel Elliott coming out of the backfield, even though he hasn't been stellar as of yet. The thing that really resonates with me, the only critical thing that I have to say about the Browns, oh my Lord, you start the fourth quarter up 41-14, and Dallas scores 24 unanswered points within the first 10 or 11 minutes of the fourth quarter. You got to be kidding me. That's just disgraceful. They almost blew this game. If it wasn't for Odell Beckham Jr. on the wraparound going for 50 yards, I mean, my goodness, they might have lost this game. So that's pretty bad on Cleveland's part, so I can't celebrate them. But nobody is as bad as the Cowboys' defense right now. They are pathetic. They are bad, and they are the reason that the Dallas Cowboys are 1-3 right now. This is the reason why they're struggling the way that they are. They should really be 0-4. If you really think about it, they should really be 0-4 because they should have never lost that game. They should have never won that game against the Atlanta Falcons in their idiotic selves.
Well, it's a great question because you can have two good answers, but I'm going to go with good Browns. And the reason is, look, I never thought when they lost to the Ravens week 1 that was such a big deal. Again, Baker Mayfield had his 4th head coach in 2 seasons and a game. And you're playing the best regular season team probably in the world last season. And Lamar Jackson and them, they're clicking on all cylinders. They have a lot of continuity. They know what to do. And the Browns don't have a preseason. What do you think is going to happen? They look bad. Now, since then, they've gotten fat off of weak opposition, including Washington and the Bengals. I get it. But they've averaged, including against the Cowboys, almost 40 points a game. And I pay attention to what people whose opinions I respect in football have to say about this kind of thing. So when Warren Sharp of Sharp Analytics said Stefanski's the perfect coach for Baker, I paid attention. When Jeff Schwartz, who I thought we have great guys breaking down plays at ESPN, our football crew is ridiculously good. Jeff Schwartz on Twitter I also follow, and a former offensive lineman for the Giants, among other teams. And he broke down Bill Callahan's work on the offensive line and what that means. Like, in other words, they put coaches in that make sense for this team and know what they're doing. And the results speak for themselves on offense, right? Like, look at Washington and Kirk Cousins. Is he a great quarterback? No, but he's a starting quarterback. And with Stefanski there, he looked like a franchise quarterback maybe. What's Baker Mayfield? I think Baker Mayfield's a starting quarterback. Maybe he's looking a little more like a franchise quarterback with the right coach and the right coaching, right? Not just the head coach, but the offensive line, the guy who's like working with your offensive line. And then you look at the personnel, how now they're running the offense through Nick Chubb. And now the threat of Odell and all the things he can do, even running the ball out of the backfield, loom large, right? Because they've turned Baker Mayfield into an efficient quarterback, an efficient starting quarterback with weapons all around him and a cohesive offensive philosophy. So I know it's just the Cowboys, it's Washington, it's Cincinnati, I get it. But they're winning and they're putting up big points, and I think especially a day like yesterday where that play by Odell basically wins the game, and who's drawing that play up? I think you have to give the Browns credit and say credit to the Browns for getting that win, now 3-1.
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely good Browns. I'm on NFL Live on Friday, and it was Mina Kimes and Marcus Spears. They both picked the Dallas Cowboys. I went I went with the Cleveland Browns. And the reason I went with the Cleveland Browns was this. I said they can rush the passer, which you need to do when you're playing against Dak Prescott, and they could run the football. And if they could do those two things effectively and hit some big plays with Odell Beckham Jr., I expected them to win. And so Kevin Stefanski is now doing what he was brought there to do. The first thing he was brought there to do was to settle down Baker Mayfield, and we've seen that with the run game. The one quote I continue to remember from the first week against Baltimore is the commentator saying that Kevin Stefanski says that Odell Beckham Jr. has the most bounce of any player he's ever been around, right? So he had the most juice. He had the most explosiveness of any player he'd ever been around. So what that told me was that he knew, right? And so in knowing that, I knew the next thing was he wanted to figure out a way to get Odell Beckham Jr. the ball, but still keep Baker Mayfield settled down and not ruin him. Because that's what Freddie Kitchens did, right? We all got excited with Baker Mayfield's rookie year, and they said, we're going to bring in all these players, and we're going to air it out. We're going to do all these things because he's a superstar. But he's not. And so when you look at this game and the way that it starts with Myles Garrett forcing a turnover, 2 sacks in the first quarter, and they run the football, but there's a reverse early on in the game to Odell Beckham Jr. There's the reverse pass from Jarvis Landry to Odell Beckham Jr. And then we give him the walk-off-the-line slant just to keep him involved. And now you're getting balls to Austin Hooper, and we're getting balls to Jarvis Landry. But it's all in the wheelhouse of what keeps Baker Mayfield confined to this pretty little cute Kirk Cousins box that Kevin Stefanski brought over from Minnesota. And so you see these things and you're saying, okay, now what you've been wondering the last 2 weeks was, can they win football games without Baker Mayfield throwing the ball a ton? And Kevin Stefanski found a way to do that. So when you look at this team, they have a style, right? They have a strategy. They have a scheme. Can that scheme carry? And yes, it can. Because what we know is they can run the football on anybody. Myles Garrett can rush the passer against anyone. And Odell Beckham Jr. can create huge plays.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.